what is happening in Tuskys. It is not about corona.
Customers wakaanza kupotea, sababu stocks mingi haziko.
Actual financial looting, they expanded too fast.
The blame unity of the family.
In November 2017, Kenya's biggest supermarket chain Nakumatt was lying on its deathbed. Burdened by debts and investor intrigues, the retail giant was no longer able to operate its stores in Kenya as well as its regional outlets in Rwanda, Uganda, and Tanzania. Not long after, Nakumatt breathed its last.
Nakumatt was evicted
from its lifestyle branch in Nairobi CBD.
You'll not be able to access Nakumatt Next Gen.
Kenya's retail hopes shifted to a supermarket that spent much of its life under the shadows of Nakumatt, a kind of sibling chain. Tuskys, or Tusker Mattresses Limited, shared foundational links with Nakumatt as a company that was supported in its initial years by Nakumatt founder the late Mangalal Shah, with humble roots in Nakuru County.
Huyu mzee wa Nakuru Mattress ambao ndio ilikuwa Nakumatt ni marafiki wa chada na pete wawili, baba yangu na huyo mzee. Hata huyo mzee alikuwa sema mimi ndio first born, baba yangu ndio second born. Walijiania katika biashara.
In 2017, Tuskys was then looked at not as a replacement of, but as a lifeline for the collapsing Nakumatt. But financial observers wondered whether it made business sense for Tuskys to merge with a retail chain that was reeling under debts of up to 40 billion Kenya shillings with no rescue plan in sight.
Tuskys initially pledged to guarantee up to 3 billion shillings worth of debt and to inject 650 million Kenya shillings short-term capital into Nakumatt. But for some reason, that did not happen. And when the Competition Authority of Kenya declined to endorse a proposed merger between the two supermarkets, then the only lifeline available for Nakumatt at that time was now out of reach.
With its biggest competitor out of the way, Tuskys naturally grew over the last 2 years of the decade, expanding further into the hypermarket business as their grocery section was now complemented by department stores selling all manner of consumer goods. It was a busy season with launches in Kisii, Eldoret, Juja, then Westlands, and even Malindi. Buoyed by the rapid expansion and the flow of consumers, Tuskys made the first step that would ultimately usher it into the league of blue-chip firms.
Listing.
An admission into the Nairobi Securities Exchange Ibuka program would provide a platform for its listing at the stock market.
As a young man in university, I remember KQ. I remember we scrabbled for Kengen. Then we went, there was Safaricom. We want to be one of those remarkable listings.
This listing was expected at the end of this year, 2020, boosted by rapid countrywide expansion that included at least 65 branches. But on the 13th of March 2020, everything changed as the novel coronavirus landed in Kenya.
Our economy, our businesses, our workers, every single Kenyan stands threatened by this invisible, relentless enemy that is COVID-19.
And jittery consumers around the country made a desperate final dash to stock up.
Corona was declared pandemic in March. Tuskys were selling. They were selling, in fact, in my own branch, we used to sell around 1.5 in a normal day. But when Corona was declared a pandemic, people were panicking. Maybe there will be a lockdown, there will be stockouts. So people were buying.
With panic buying peaking across all supermarkets, Tuskys announced it would open an e-commerce platform, complete with a delivery chain to its customers to avoid crowding in stores. But beneath this public display of leadership and innovation, Tuskys was experiencing a serious case of internal bleeding.
April, we were so surprised. The lowest earning was subjected to a pay cut of 20%. Without any consultation, without maybe engaging the union.
April tukaanza stocks zilikuwa zimeenda chini kiasi, hakukuwa na replenishment venye ilikuwa kama huko nyuma. Wakaanza na kutuambia tuanze kwenda unpaid leaves. Customers hawako. Mwezi wa 6 tukalipwa mshahara vizuri. Mwezi wa 7 hakukuwa na mshahara up to date. Hakuna mshahara tunalipwa. Na hawajali wala hawacommunicate, hawasemi ni nini, hawasemi kutalipwa vipi ama ni vipi.
Between March and October 2020, 14 branches closed down. Dwindling stocks and complaints from unpaid staffers became the norm at the remaining 50 branches. A company that was ready to bail out Nakumatt 3 years ago had no choice in August 2020 but to sign a terms of agreement with a faceless and unnamed Mauritius-based fund for the provision of a financing facility worth 2 billion Kenya shillings. This injection was part of what they needed to clear a 6.2 billion Kenya shillings supplier debt amongst other obligations. Some creditors, having seen this pattern before, could wait no longer, and in October the retailer had to get a reprieve from the High Court, which barred Hotpoint, a home appliances and electronic dealer, from trying to dissolve the troubled chain over a 248 million Kenya shillings debt.
Sasa tunaombea kampuni at least ipate ile urejesho wa kitambo. Ndio mambo inaenda kuwa worse.
In less than 8 months, the leading supermarket in the country had gone from a shining family-owned jewel to a tragic retail twist.
Mtu afanye kazi miezi 4 without pay.
Financial analysts point out that throughout its growth, Tuskys remained dangerously exposed as an exclusively family-owned retail business.
Now, to truly understand the retail sector in this country, you have to go back at least 40 years to the early 1980s to Kenya's retail Silicon Valley, Nakuru County, where, believe it or not, these leading supermarkets, Nakumatt, Tuskys, Naivas, and Quickmart, all count that location as the place of their humble beginnings.
And coincidentally, the founders even had some business dealings together in these formative years. By 1982, Nakuru Mattresses was the forerunner there with at least 2 stores. But 30 kilometers away from town, in Rongai, the late Joram Kamau had already dipped his toes into the retail sector and was giving it another try, this time round with a shop called Magic Superstore that initially dealt with mattresses before expanding its offering.
Customers ya hii duka walikuwa wengi sana, kwa sababu walikuwa natoka area hii yote, na hii kazi iliendelea wakati hiyo bila shida yoyote, kwa sababu mzee alikuwa anapendwa sana.
The father of 9 would encourage his children to get involved in the family business as soon as they were done with their basic education, which is why many of them got into full-time business rather than pursuing tertiary education.
Kwa hivyo tabia mzee ilikuwa ni kupenda kazi yake na kuamka mapema.
The highly religious founder, who banned the sale of cigarettes and alcohol in his stores, would get certain goods at almost no charge from Mangalal Shah, the founder of Nakumatt, which he would then sell at discounted prices. Thus, as he prospered, Joram left the Rongai store to his brother, Peter Mukuha Kago, who transformed this into Naiva Supermarkets, currently the country's largest supermarket chain.
The business took a turn for the better in the late 1980s when Tuskys founder Joram Kamau, with the help of Nakumatt founder Mangalal Shah, opened the first branch in Nairobi on this street, Mfangano Street. And the start of that business is now what you see in that building behind me.
Over the next few years, the company expanded its branch offering by strategically placing their stores near bus stations and offering low prices on goods as compared to their competitors. 12 years later, in 2002, Joram Kamau passed on, leaving the 8-store supermarket in the hands of his children. Nothing much was known about how these reclusive siblings ran the company until the year 2012, when court documents laid it all bare. Tuskys supermarket was now owned by Oracom Holdings Limited, with 7 shareholders who were 7 out of the 9 siblings of Joram Kamau, namely John Kago Kamau with 10% shareholding, Stephen Mukuha Kamau with 17.5% shareholding, Sami Gatei Kamau with 17.5% shareholding, Yusuf Mugweru Kamau with 17.5% shareholding, and George Gashwe Kamau, who also had 17.5% shareholding. The non-director shareholders listed in the court documents were the late Monica and Jerry Kamau with 10% shareholding and Merin Joki Kamau with 10% shareholding. The court documents further reveal that on the 3rd of April 2012, Yusuf Mugweru Kamau and his niece Anwa Maitha Gatei, a Tuskys employee, recorded a statement at the Economic and Commercial Crimes Unit of the Directorate of Criminal Investigation, accusing siblings Stephen Mukuha, George Gashwe and another of siphoning 1.6 billion Kenya shillings out of the company between May 2009 to January 2012. The money held in 5 Tuskys bank accounts was transferred to third-party companies' bank accounts, which were allegedly owned by the 2 directors and other unknown individuals. According to Mugweru's complaint, these wire transfers were brought to his attention by Ann Gatei, an internal auditor at Tuskys, who had since been sacked by the then managing director Stephen Mukuha. Yusuf went on to tell the CID that the money was transferred as follows: 1. 279 million shillings sent to Tuskys Kampala, 400 million Kenya shillings sent to Gudhera Villas Limited, 200 million Kenya shillings sent to Pop Maida Limited, 322 million Kenya shillings was sent to Kenspor Company, and 441 million Kenya shillings was sent to the Enkarasha department store. Court documents also show that in early 2012, Yusuf, who at that time was said to be in charge of marketing and sales operations of Tuskys, made his way to the company's headquarters for a meeting with some of his fellow directors, and according to his statement,
with a view of discussing the aforementioned questionable transactions in the financial affairs of the first applicant, Tusker Mattresses Limited. But as soon as he demanded information on the incorporation or ownership of the companies that had received massive payment from the first applicant Tusker Mattresses Limited, the second applicant Stephen Mukuha became extremely violent and assaulted him in full view of the workers of the first applicant Tusker Mattresses Limited. He made a report and recorded a statement at Embakasi Police Station, after which the second applicant was charged in Nairobi Criminal Case number 284 of 2012 with the offence of assault case number 251 of the Penal Code.
In his replying affidavit, the then Tuskys managing director Stephen Mukuha accused Yusuf of engaging in illegal acts and conduct at their headquarters in early February and having a grudge against him. He also accused Yusuf of
wrongfully using the criminal legal process in combination with the adverse media publicity campaign to resolve the company dispute to their advantage.
4 years later, 2 Tuskys directors, Stephen Mukuha and George Kamau, were charged in court with stealing 1.6 billion Kenya shillings from the company on diverse dates. The status of this case is at the moment unclear, but Yusuf Mugweru did speak to us, giving us his version of how the shareholders' relationship deteriorated.
Najua biashara ya familia mostly inajengwa na unity ya family. Na yule mwenye uwezo wa kufanya jambo fulani hata haambiage tu ndio sasa utaendesha. Mara nyingi aendeshe. Tukiona tunafuata barabara moja tunapigana makonde. Sasa wewe pengine ukiona tunapigana na hatufai kupigana, hata umwambii unatoka. Na yana hivyo ndivyo tumefanya kazi yetu. Hatukukaa chini tukasema wewe ndio utafanya hii, wewe ndio utafanya hii, wewe ndio utafanya hii.
Yusuf says he walked away from the daily operations of the family business after that to pursue other interests, but he still holds a significant stake in the company. Meanwhile, as all this was going on, Tuskys continued to expand, and in 2015, the supermarket chain celebrated 25 years of existence with a roadshow in Nairobi and other parts of the country. At the same time, in May, the supermarket appointed its first non-family chief executive officer, former internal auditor Dan Githua. His appointment came at a time when industry leaders were declaring their wealth in the fight against private sector graft.
Corruption is not in the realm of government alone. A lot of it is private sector led in terms of corruption, and therefore private sector people come in to declare their wealth and to share, more than declaring wealth, to say that we are committed to fight corruption.
But whilst all looked rosy in public, behind the scenes, one of Tuskys' banking partners was jittery about the management of the family-owned business. And in 2016, 3 independent executive directors and a host of professionals were brought on board to steer the supermarket chain to higher heights. And what they found was hard to believe.
Company X has supplied goods worth 200 million. That is just on paper. But in actual sense, there's no supply then.
Stay tuned for part 2 of the Tuskys tragedy, coming up after the break.